Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Tony Mcleod from Domain Pools in Melbourne. So Tony runs a pool building business and he also used to do landscaping as well. So we talk about where he started, and he's been in business for a couple of years. So that's a good chat to start off with. And then we talk into what he's currently doing now and a couple of projects he's worked on. He talks us through a massive job that he got that kind of kick-started his career early on a big project in Melbourne. He touches on what he would charge for paving per square metre and how it's not quite as fast as what people think it is to do paving. And I also ask him a question which I get asked occasionally: what's the difference between going with a fibreglass or concrete pool? So hopefully you enjoy this chat with Tony Mcleod. Tony, thank you for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. So the first question that I've got for you is how you got into the industry and started it all.
Interesting. I sort of, I did finish my year 11 at De La Salle in Melbourne, and I told my parents that I was going to have a year off because I felt like I'd studied that hard, and they said, "No, sorry, no chance. You better go and get yourself a job." So that sort of floored all of that. Wasn't really much interested in continuing to, well, in those days, I guess year 12 wasn't sort of super necessary. And so I thought, initially I wanted to be a cook. I really, I think, and the two sort of go hand in hand in a lot of ways. I think both quite creative, but missed out on some of the kitchen hand jobs that I was sort of looking at doing, that I'd sort of hoping to get into cooking, and then the landscape came up, and at the time, I guess when we were at school, landscape was pretty cool to get into. So I guess in when would it have been? 1978, I think. So well before a lot of people listening to this would be born, I'd say. But started out a career with in landscaping, which was with, at the time, I got on board with a government scheme that was sort of part of the education department. It was called State Schools Nurseries, and there was a number of there's quite a few good guys with good pedigrees came out of State Schools Nurseries, and particularly in the commercial sector. But I started off there in 1978 as a 17-year-old. And I guess it sort of gave me the opportunity to be creative. I was outdoors. I wasn't much into sports, so I guess the actual work, I enjoyed being fit. So the actual work sort of kept me fit, and pretty much went from there, Joel. I sort of landed on my feet pretty well. I was always sort of surprised I wasn't snapped up as an apprentice, because there were other guys that so when this whole initiative started in '78, and it was a big time of unemployment, and the government had put together this scheme for guys that were like 17 years old, 18 years old, who've just left school, and it was the government had sort of put this together to start enhancing state schools, and they already had a nursery over in Oakley that they had there for, I don't know, 80 years or something ridiculous, and then which a lot of young guys would know, there's the Holmes Glen campus of for the apprenticeship training on Waverley Road there. That was State Schools Nurseries. So that whole, I think there was 10 acres in there. That was all pretty much nurseries, admin, and quite a bit of landscape and nursery stock. So that's sort of where it all started, Joel.
And so did you end up getting an apprenticeship, or did you start just working for someone and just learned on the job?
It took a while. Before I got an apprenticeship, they'd sort of recognised that I'd sort of had some good sort of leadership skills, I guess. So, and I guess just to cut to the chase, I ended up being there for 10 years. So I became sort of part of the furniture. I guess probably in about 81, 82, the government had another initiative for people with long-term unemployment. And it was something I guess the government used to do quite a bit of in the during this time, as they'd sort of put all this in place for people that were unemployed, and it was a good opportunity for guys to learn skills. So in about, I guess, 1982, 83, they gave me a crew of unemployed people that, and some of these guys were out of jail, were drug dealers, you know, had come from a very different background to what I'd come from. So it was, in some ways, it was really rewarding, I guess, from a young boy from the suburbs in Mount Waverley, pretty conservative sort of suburb, to sort of meet up with all these guys from very diverse groups, made it very interesting and challenging. So, and then from there, I was elected team leader, so they gave me a vehicle, they gave me a team of these young guys, and then when I started there, then they gave me an apprenticeship. So, but yeah, we were building landscapes at that time. Gee, in the 80s, we were building landscapes at some of these government, you know, the government schools that were, you know, a couple of $100,000, which were, you know, big budgets of the day. So, you know, we're getting to handle some big budgets. You know, we're working with big excavators, trucks, doing all of this sort of stuff. So, no, it was interesting, good fun.
Cool. And when did you end up starting your own business? How long after that was it?
Well, I had 10 years with State Schools Nurseries, and then it was just at the end of my time there, we got a couple of us got headhunted by a company called Natural Swimming Pools out in Ringwood. And at the time, Natural Swimming Pools were probably the pool builder in Australia. They're an amazing company, very progressive. So I got interviewed by the directors there. They'd seen some of our work that we'd done working for the government. One of the other guys that I was working with had been for an interview, so they'd sort of they'd eyeballed a couple of us in the team. So we got the opportunity. I went along at Natural Pools and started there in 1989, and worked there for 18 months, and then did 18 months overseas, and then came back from overseas after 18 months, and then went back to Natural Pools. But yeah, it was good to, I guess, come from a government, although we were what they called, State Schools Nurseries were a self-funded government body, in so much they used to actually have to tender for jobs, and they'd have to price jobs. And so they were very price conscious, and so we had to turn a profit. So I sort of had not so much of a government upbringing, I suppose, because it was, we still had to be competitive out there in the marketplace. So once I joined Natural Pools, it exposed me, I guess, to a domestic arena, but it was sort of the same but different, I guess. I remember Frank Morden threw me into a job in just off Reserve Road in Beaumaris after I was about 2 weeks in, and he just left me there by myself just to do my thing, and there was very little direction or anything. Just go for it, start paving around a swimming pool. So, which was an interesting approach. Throw you in the deep end. I'd never paved around a pool before. I remember I actually I laid they were bricks at the time. We laid a coping brick, and I laid it directly on top of the first row of tiles. I didn't leave a joint or anything in there, but we never lost any tiles, and no one complained. But so that was my first initiation. So in the swimming pool industry. So worked there, as I said, 18 months. Then came back from overseas, which was great. Sort of gave us a little bit of an insight. We came back, worked at Natural Pools for another 18 months, and then we went into a pretty major recession. I'd moved house, my wife was pregnant, and I'd started a business. So I'd just given myself a hamburger with a lot during a worldwide depression. And this was pretty crazy, Joel. I'd gone from working at some pretty amazing properties around Melbourne, you know, Toorak, you know, in those days, Ringwood and Park Orchards was and out that way with all these big blocks was pretty salubrious, and we worked at some amazing places, saw some amazing swimming pools, and sort of just gave me an appreciation of, you know, the domestic arena, I suppose. And Frank Morden was incredibly creative. He was, I think he was born up in Woods Point, up in the high country past Jamison, up the top end of Eildon, Woods Point. And the guy had a natural appreciation for the bush. So he passed a lot of this on to his staff, because he was the rock guru. So we used to do rock placements on swimming pools, and, you know, you just get Mel Gallatley, who I think the Gallatleys are still out there at Transrock, but their dad used to, you know, drop us out a truckload of rock, and Frank would say, all right, we'll put that together on the swimming pool and, you know, build a water feature and build a garden. So it was really good. So then Frank sort of from there, a lot of these early gardens were probably Australian native gardens, and sort of something that sort of he inherited from growing up in the country. And I guess I grew up in the country myself, so I had an appreciation of I guess the natural environment, I suppose, and a natural landscape. So yeah, it was a really good sort of grounding in domestic landscape. And then as we progressed through a couple of years there, Frank sort of diversified a little bit into more of as garden was evolving, and you know, out from the 70s gardens, you know, the native gardens of the 70s and 80s, Frank sort of started doing sort of gardens with a bit of an Asian flair. So we were sort of busy building gardens that sort of, you know, with some big, beautiful pieces of granite, but, you know, we're then integrating some, you know, beautiful weeping maples and different conifers, and just sort of paring the landscape back. But just, yeah, it was a really something that I loved. And I loved that, I guess, that Australasian style of garden where we could, you know, we could blend in some natives, and we could blend in some conifers, we could put camellias in there, we could put maples in there, and create something pretty amazing, fairly eclectic, but, you know, beautiful garden. So I guess it's sort of a bit of a freeform sort of style of landscaping, which I really liked. And I guess I often see when they, even with the landscape awards, or, you know, they'd send out all these forms, and you'd have these, you know, send us in all your plans of your gardens, and a lot of it was pretty basic. You know, a lot of the landscapes we would do would be a very simple sketch design, and I guess it's up to the landscaper to really interpret that and actually build a garden from, you know, just a one-page site plan. Maybe the swimming pool scratched on there. There's some rock work in there. There's some sort of planting, some selective planting around the place. But so it was a really freeform style of landscaping, which I think is sort of a little bit lost, but I sort of get it at the same time these days, you know, how people build gardens. So I guess it's, you know, gardens have become quite structured and what have you. But yeah, so from natural pools, I started, I had a bit of a regression there for a while, Joel. My wife's uncle had bought a lawn mowing business, and I'd lost my job, so I had this massive mortgage, but if I compare it to today's standards, it wasn't too bad. And a pregnant wife and a new home we were trying to renovate. So I jumped on board with my wife's uncle doing garden maintenance. Now, I guess I think I was a little overskilled, to be honest, but garden maintenance was really more of a glorified name for a lawn mowing round.
Yep.
And I guess as much as it wasn't really what I wanted to do, I thought I needed money, and I'd sort of do anything just to keep the wheels turning. And to be honest, there was just no work around. Work had sort of just dried up, and it's nothing compared to what we've seen in the last, you know, 5 to 10 years. Anyway, we battled through that. I think I got down to about 75 kilos. I'd run every day with a lawnmower. I'd be up trees. I'd be cleaning gutters. I'd be mopping floors, did whatever. And to be honest, I think at the end of that, I think I did it for 15 or 18 months. And I guess I had this ambition that I was going to be the best lawn mowing guy in Melbourne. And I think for a moment I was, and then I thought, what am I doing? And I guess work sort of at that time, it was probably 90, 93, 94, you know, things were sort of picking up a little bit in the economy. And I thought, oh, look, I couldn't do it anymore. I called it, what was it? Two-stroke fever or something. I just had this smell of two-stroke used to make me feel sick. Like I'd be running with a brush cutter or something all day. So it gave me a bit of insight, you know, into garden maintenance, and it is a really important thing. I guess, you know, you see, you know, guys that have got good garden maintenance businesses, and, you know, the gardens look amazing. So I've got all due respect for the guys doing that. I used to enjoy, when we were at state schools, nurseries, we used to do quite a bit of major tree pruning and things like that. So I guess I sort of brought along a bit of that sort of into what I did, and I liked sort of sculpturing trees for in a landscape. So in some ways, you know, the 15 months wasn't a total loss, but I knew exactly what I didn't want to do. So from there, I went into business for myself, and I actually did a couple of jobs with Natural Pools because they knew what I was capable of doing. So I went back and started doing a bit of paving around their pools, and that was it was sort of a little bit of a because at the time when I'd left there, I'd actually lost my job because, again, it was a real downturn in the market, and you know, they were just cutting back staff, and myself and Grant Saltmarsh. Not sure if you'd heard of Grant, but
I've heard, yeah, there's an award named after him.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, well, Grant and I worked together at Natural Pools. I got a job there, and then Grant was sort of in our friendship group. I was really good, you know, became really good friends with him, and he loved his landscaping. And I said, hey, mate, I'll see if I can get you a job down here at Natural Pools. So, so we sort of kept that relationship going. And even after we'd finished, and as I said, moving forward, gone out by myself, Grant and I had done a few jobs together and over the journey, and lots of cooking. We always sort of went back, and Grant and I always had a real big passion for cooking and new landscapes and new landscape designs and stonework and all of that sort of thing. So, yeah, so I went into, you know, start my own business, I guess. So it sort of started off in '92 with my garden maintenance, and then sort of moved over into the landscape sector. So I was sort of back in territory that I knew. And then just started the usual scenario. I suppose you start doing your mum and your dad's place, and then your auntie and uncle's place, and a string of friends, and then all of a sudden you're off and racing. So did that, I think, for another 18 months, and then I got sort of headhunted by some guys down in Hyatt called Raglan Meadows, who were they're another commercial landscape group. And I thought, they said, well, you know, you can come on contract for us for a bit and do some work. So I worked with those guys for about 18 months, doing some fairly large sort of scale commercial projects. So sort of took the heat out of trying to source out any more relatives to do work for. So it was sort of a bit of a time where I could sort of let's say reset, I suppose, do another sort of reset. You know, work was still a bit sort of sketchy in those times. And then I guess, Joel, it was quite a journey. Probably must have been mid-90s. I went out on my own again. It would have been probably 95. I went sort of back. I did my stint with Raglan Meadows and thought, look, I really need to I really want to do my own thing a bit more, you know, commercial work. I'd sort of, you know, it was sort of 12 years of it I'd done by that stage. And I thought, look, I really, yeah, I mean, it's sort of landscaping by numbers in some ways. So I was ready to get back into my own arena and see if I could sort of carve something in for myself. So a mate of mine owned a company called Stonehaven Homes in Richmond, and they'd sort of offered us along the way a couple of projects to do and a couple more projects to do, and that sort of evolved really well. We had a, you know, they did some really beautiful homes, and you know, they were sort of at their sort of starting point as well. So we sort of started off with them 95, 96, I guess, and then yeah, about 96, and then from there we just sort of grew the business from there, really. You know, it's sort of like one apprentice. You know, you sort of start off, everyone's sort of there, you get too much work for yourself, so you add an apprentice along the way, and then, you know, we sort of slowly built the team up from there. And then in 97, I think 98, they got a project. They landed a project at 40 Monomath Avenue in Canterbury, and this was sort of like an acre of land in the middle of Canterbury, massive home that had already been designed. And they asked me whether I was interested in looking at the landscape, and I thought, oh my God, where do we start with here? And I was sort of doing quite a, you know, before that, quite a bit of sort of design, like just simple design. I've got a pretty practical approach, I guess, to landscaping. You know, it's got to work. Essentially, something's got to work. So it's not just a colourful sort of picture. It's got to actually have a purpose. So, but this was way out of my league, like, you know, an acre of land in Canterbury and a really formal French provincial home. So I reached out to a guy I used to work with back at State Schools Nurseries, a guy called Pac Raphael. And Pac was an amazing artist. Like, he was one of the most humble fellas you'd ever know, but he was just so creative, and he was an amazing artist. And he had while he worked with the government, I think it was just somewhere where he parked up for 10 years. And because we had so much fun there, we had a great group of people, but he just parked up there and did his thing. Anyway, I reached out to him when we looked at this job at Monomath Avenue. So I said to the builder, look, do you mind if I sort of see if we can get this guy, engage this guy? He does amazing work. So I showed the builder his portfolio, and they go, oh my God, this is amazing. And anyway, so at that time, you know, Paul Bangay had quite a bit of traction in the market and was building these really, you know, beautiful, you know, French style manicured gardens, and he does amazing work. I've got a lot of respect for Paul Bangay. He builds or designs a beautiful garden. Anyway, Pac is in the same league, and easily the same league, but he just had no real drive, I don't think, to sort of have any notoriety. He was happy in his own skin, and he's happy in his own world. So but he designed this garden, which we built, and it took us like 18 months to build it, like full time. And it was one of the most amazing projects, the most amazing chances to actually hone some skills that you sort of went, okay, this is, you know, everything was sort of pinpoint accuracy. You know, we were planting gardens that were in areas where we had to sort of devise really quite elaborate drainage systems and pump systems, and yeah, it was a real turning point, Giles. This was my opportunity to sort of put the moniker on the map, you know, sort of be able to really get myself up there. And so, yeah, I guess, as I said, over the course of the 18 months, it was full design development as we went along on this project. We lost a few trees initially. We did, I'm just trying to think, I'm just trying to think of the conifer. We planted a whole bunch of conifers around the pool house, and we had a fair fatality rate, and the ground that I guess the builder had sort of put in back around the pool house was pretty hostile, pretty crap ground. So, you know, we'd sort of worked it up where we could, but we still had a bit of a fatality rate. So, you know, I remember I got one of the professors in from Burnley at the time, just to sort of, I rang him up just to reach out to him, just to find out, you know, why have I lost so many trees? So, you know, this never happened to me before. And he came out, I'll never forget, he came out with a golf club without a head on it. And it was like a cake skewer. So he went around the garden, and I still do this to this day. He went around the garden with this golf club, and he just put it in the soil, and he just drove it in the soil, and in several spots, and he said, "Well, there's your problem. It's too wet." And I went, "Oh wow!" And then he'd sort of go to another area. I mean, we had lots of drainage behind the retaining wall, but the ground itself was just that hostile, and it was just holding too much water. So we lifted trees, we put drainage underneath them, we put drainage specifically back into the drainage layer at the back of the retaining wall, so we could then start to establish these trees, because the soil was quite good, it was just holding too much water. And I guess with achieving a little bit of drainage in there just gave the trees enough chance to sort of get in and get their roots into the soil and start removing some of the moisture. And yeah, it ended up that part of the whole garden was amazing, really. We went from there to putting in some 10-metre palms from established tree transplanters. And again, we'd sort of learned our lesson, and we looked at the ground, and it was pretty much that part of Canterbury, Monomeath Avenue, Hopeton Road, Victoria Street. There's so much water under those blocks. There's like a subterranean sort of river that goes underneath there. So and we knew the ground was too hostile, and we had these 10-metre palms that we'd sort of go out. We went and selected. So we put in these pump systems. Put in 300 mil slotted. We grabbed some 300 mil slotted PVC, and we overdug the holes. We filled them up with a metre of scoria drainage aggregate below the trees. We dropped these 300 mil slotted stormwater pipes right into the drainage aggregate, and we were buying these Shirumi sidearm float pumps, and we were just continually, they just emptied the water out of these palm holes all day. Palms are still there. They grow. They've just grown amazing. So the whole sort of this subterranean garden, because it was in quite a low area, all sort of fed into these drainage areas where these trees were. And then it just sort of went from there. Really, I mean, the builder, you know, built the retaining walls. We did all the copings, and we did all. At the time, fibre optic lighting below the copings. I think we had, I don't know, 1.5 kilometres of capping tiles that went on top of the walls, and each of those had we'd grab a grinder blade with 4 blades on it, and we'd sort of cut a slot out underneath the coping, and that in there they just pushed that was sort of like the track for the LED lighting. And yeah, so I guess over the then, you know, that sort of, I guess the project sort of you know, when we did everything on there, you know, other than retaining walls, we did concrete, you know, a lot of the concreting, drainage, the irrigation systems, the garden lighting, the planting, and miles of paving. So there was just acres of paving on this job, all inside the pool house, and pathways and steps. And
did you make any money on that job?
What's that, sorry?
Did you make any money on that job?
It's an interesting one, you say that. It's an interesting one, because we, I always say to people, we actually, as we put it in the, PAC wanted us to leave it for the, another year till we put it in the awards, but it was we put it in the 2000 awards, and I sort of thought that was quite a milestone the year 2000. So we put it in the 2000 awards, and we did really well. We got Paving in the landscape, and we got best job over $100,000. We got and landscape of the year that year, which was pretty exciting. So I just sort of cornered the year 2000, but it was a time, there was a real strange tax thing that went on that year with what was it? You used to have withholding tax, but we ended up, I didn't make any money. And I would sort of say that it's very difficult with some of these big jobs and these jobs where people do win awards. It can be very difficult because of the amount of detail that goes into them to actually do any good. But the following year at tax time, I think I might have made some money, because I think that year I might have taken, I don't know, let's say for argument's sake, I made $50,000. Well, you know, that was my wages. Like, it wasn't, you know, how much did I make? It was like, oh, look, I've probably made some wages, but the tax came back the next year was quite fruitful. But so I think we did okay on that. I think we did okay.
That's a pretty common thing when people are doing a big job, like when it's going to be, you know, thinking it can launch them into the projects they want to work on. It can be a common thing where they kind of buy into it by doing it cheaper to get the job, but then you can.
Yeah.
It works out 100%. Good in the long run.
Yeah. Oh, look, 100%. Yep. Look, 100%. Look, these. And I'd always do my quoting, and I would quote. You know, I would sort of go through my quotes stick by stick, brick by brick. You know, look, how much is it going to cost me? You know, for the contract, how much is it going to take? How much time is it going to take me to write up the contract? You know, what's my insurance is going to be? And then I just work through every step, you know, like what's my establishment costs, you know, paving costs. And people would say, you know, oh, look, we're pricing our paving out at X amount of metre. And I'd say, so how many metres are you doing in a day? And we sort of worked out, we sort of had a rule of thumb at the time that we knew progressively over probably 20 years that you could, and this might surprise some people listening to this, but you've got to think about it. We could sort of guarantee we could complete 4 square metres in a day. And you go, what? Is that all? Well, I'll tell you, Joel, I remember a good day when I was working by myself with no one else, and I was young and enthusiastic, and I put down 20 metres of terracotta one day, mixed it all myself. You know, I had the mixer sort of right beside me. The pavers weren't too far away, and it was a pretty straightforward job, and I'd laid 20 square metres. But by the time you'd cut that job in, by the time you graded it, by the time you'd actually got the pavers up there, by the time you'd set your mixer up, you got your sand, your cement, everything else out there, you graded it, cut it in, cleaned it up, cleaned all the rubbish up, acid washed it, done whatever you've had to do, I'd say I'd probably, even then on a good day, I'd probably only ever completed 4 square metres in a day. So, and that's how we worked out our paving for years and years. We'd just work it on 4 square metres and whatever we thought was a fair rate with, you know, with wages at the time, or what we should charge out of beat. It was always worked on that 4 square metres. So, what are your thoughts about that one?
Yeah, I did one day. I'll work the same deal, working by myself, paving around a pool, and I laid 33 square metres in a day.
Wow.
But that was the most I'd ever done. But I'd usually, I probably started out allowing 16 square metres a day, and then, yeah, I'm probably down to about 10 now, I reckon.
Okay.
And still need to keep going lower, exactly like you said, because you've got to take grading, and it depends on the size of the paver and where they are. There's just a million different things you've got to take into account. Nothing seems to make it go faster.
No, exactly. Yep. And as I said, by the time you clean that, you know, you've cut it all in. You've cut the job in. You've cut the drainage points in. You've graded it up. You've cleaned the paver. You've got rid of all the rubbish around on the site. Honestly, it's sort of, and I would, you know, you hear some pretty remarkable sort of feats, like 33 metres is huge, but if you did that every day, you'd be probably do it for maybe a week.
Yeah.
And and then you'd be probably dead. So
Yeah.
I think you've got to look at it sort of realistically, don't you? You know, how
Yeah.
long you could actually do it for. But yeah, so I always sort of thought that would probably project us once we finished that job. I don't know, maybe thought I didn't need to promote myself too much. But look, I don't know, it's you know, we sort of did all right. We kept sort of moving on from there, and we did some really nice projects after that job, on the back of that job, I suppose. I feel if it was the same thing happened today, I'd be in a different position. I think the landscape market, I've never seen it so buoyant at the moment. And Melbourne has essentially always loved, you know, Melbourne, Victoria. I know you're regional, but I've got a brother down in Geelong. So, you know, it's sort of, I guess, almost a satellite sort of part of Melbourne. But we love our real estate, I guess, and people are investing more and more into their home real estate. So I reckon today guys are really in a really fortunate position. If you can do good work, your currency is worth a lot of money. You know, your skills are worth a lot of money. But no, we sort of carried on from that team. We carried through. We carried through till about 2004. I got quite sick, and I think just stress and just working so hard. I mean, I'd always had this thing that the more I pump out, the more hours I pump out, probably the more money I make, I guess, you know, because I guess you're a tradesman, you're not coming up with anything too sort of, you know, you're not inventing anything that's sort of going to make you a lot of money. You're just sort of trading your skills for money, I suppose. So we'd always sort of work on maximum output of hours. So we'd work crazy hours, to be honest. And in 2004 might have got the better of me. So I think from starting having a young family like yourself, and then, you know, doing sort of 50, 60 hours a week, it sort of caught up with me. So I was in hospital for a few months. And then, which was also a pretty interesting period, because it was at that time I sort of realised I had a really good team of guys, and gave me the opportunity that I could actually run my business from a computer. So with the aid of a laptop and a mobile phone, I could sort of be in hospital and I could still direct traffic. So I had terrific guys work with me who sort of, everyone stepped up. And I guess that's the thing. I guess you got to empower your staff to some degree, give them, and I suppose from that time on, because I guess, you know, like most business owners or small business owners, and I'm still a bit of a control freak, you tend to sort of take total control. But this gave me the opportunity that guys had learnt great skills. They could actually then, the skills that they'd learnt, they could put into practice. And so we're continue to build some really great jobs. And as soon as I got better, I went back out on site, and it just took me a while to sort of think, no, look, I need to sort of step back a little bit from it. And so I sort of became a little bit more of a manager, I suppose. Like I started to, you know, just manage my staff and manage projects and manage clients. And I guess my clients, I always sort of seem to pick, and I suppose you sort of pick people that are similar to you. So I guess if you've got high expectations, we would find clients with high expectations. And so it takes a lot of time, I think, to really, takes a lot of time to sort of get a project off the ground. It takes a lot of conversation on choosing materials. It gets a lot of time to sort of make it come together and put it together a project, and to make it sort of work seamlessly. So I did that, I guess, for the next, you know, pretty much 14 years, I guess. So I continued with my landscape business, and then in let's see, where are we now? I think in 2000 and I've got to do my maths on this. It starts, the years get away from you, Joel. It's a bit scary. I've had my builder's license now for about 16 years. So when all the licensing became started, the landscape industry started to invest into getting guys up and being licensed. I guess I was probably at the forefront with a lot of guys like Bruce Winstanley and Brian Rankin and Don Thompson and Ian Barker and all these guys that were landscaping around the same period, and there'll be other guys. I'm sorry, I probably should mention your name, but so we all became licensed, and I guess working around swimming pools, and we'd already built a few swimming pools for people at that stage as owner builders, or we'd built pools for builders as well. So it sort of seemed like a natural progression, and I guess having the experience from the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s with natural pools, it was sort of a natural progression, and it seemed to be a time when everyone was starting to build a swimming pool. So
were you involved in
were
you involved in the construction of any of the pools when you were at natural pools?
More so on the landscape side of it, but we'd get involved in, we probably got involved in the worst part of the construction, when there'd be a cave-in or there'd be something that would go pear-shaped, because I guess predominantly most swimming pool companies, and I think Aloha Pools are probably the only ones that really do everything in-house, but it's pretty much a subcontract style of business, people. So yeah, so we used to run pipes, dig trenches for pipe runs. We'd go and do the pre-interiors on the swimming pools, so we'd sort of clean out the pools, get them ready for tiling, do all the sealing around all the pipes, run the pipes into position, backfill, do the water features, and then the paving and things around it. So not so much on the structural side. We weren't doing any of the steel fixing or any of the pool plumbing at that stage. So yeah, so now I guess our business, like a lot of landscape guys have, probably 16 years ago sort of said, oh, well, look, we may as well, if we're getting our builder's license, we may as well sort of jump on board and get our pool license. So I was sort of lucky as well. I had a good pedigree, I guess, coming from natural pools, and then I had a lot of good guys that came out of that group that actually built pools. So I was pretty fortunate. I actually had the I had access to some really good pool builders like Carl Decker from Waterview Pools. I mean, Carl builds beautiful pools. Cole Sloggett from East Coast Pools. And so, yeah, I was sort of very fortunate that I had some really good people to sort of fall back on. And because there's no, I guess, as you know, and I think it's one of the biggest letdowns within the landscape industry is that there's no module there in the landscape apprenticeship course to do pool construction. So
yeah, that's something I've thought of wanting to do going forward, but
yeah,
I don't know how you go about it. Like, how can you, without going to work for a pool builder?
Yeah, well, look, I guess it certainly sort of it helps, but I guess, look, to be honest with you, and I guess we saw a massive sort of amount of guys come over from the industry, and some guys, like ourselves, we kept going with the landscape for many years, because, to be honest, I love the landscape, and I think having the full control over doing the whole project was really rewarding. And as I said, we built some beautiful work, and I guess as I've just got older, I think it's just trying to you know, we're just sort of trying to pare back our business in a way. So, you know, we sort of slowed down on the landscape. But getting back to your point, look, it's I think it's an industry it's pretty much it's part of the landscape industry. You know, like it should be a module in there. And I've been pushing both Sparza, who are the master pool builders now. I've been pushing them. And, you know, I'd sort of discussed even with Megan Flower at Landscapes Victoria that it's something that needs to be part of our module. You know, they've got some, you know, you do months and months and months of OH&S, you do months and months of, you know, maybe project management and months of, you know, so many things that are just, you know, landscape based, but, you know, it's certainly an area I think, or it should be a module or an elective that you should be able to put in place. So if you're doing the course and if you've got, you know, you want to do swimming pool construction, then it should be there because, I mean, Sparza do a couple of, or the Master Pool Builders Australia do a number of short courses, which are good, and that'd be something that would be, if you're interested to get into the market, then you could certainly look at doing. But it's sort of like anything, you know, like I guess to do a 3-day course doesn't really give you a whole lot of skills, but I guess given what you do with landscape, you understand excavation, you understand how steel needs to go together, you understand what the properties of the concrete are, you understand things need to be level, need to be square. So you'd sort of find a lot of landscapers actually probably become better pool builders than guys that have perhaps, and hopefully people don't take this the wrong way, but you know, guys become pool builders for lots of different reasons. You know, sometimes they're accountants, sometimes they've come in from pool servicing, sometimes they've come from steel fixing, sometimes they've come from, you know, pool plumbing, for example. And they're all really good skills, and they're all really good skills that have sort of helped them along the way. And you know, I guess you learn over the journey how you can, you know, become a good pool builder. But I think the landscape skills of what you would know and what a lot of guys in the industry would know, you know, that certainly with some training and with some, you know, mentoring, you could become very good at what you do.
Yeah, like you say, a lot of it is organising subcontractor stuff. You're not digging the hole yourself. You're not putting the steel in, not putting the shotcrete in.
No, but it's one of those things, Joel, and you hear some horrendous stories within the industry, and so it's sort of something that you go, it's, you know, and as I got mates that probably like yourself that are builders and electricians and plumbers, but you know, you get builders say, well, it's only digging a hole, and you know, you're putting a bit of steel and concrete in it, and I go, well, you guys struggle to waterproof shower bases. I mean, how many builders do you talk to and they go, bloody shower's leaking, you know, we've got a leaking shower on this job or something. So it's one of those things, it sort of sounds simple, but I guess it's understanding, and this is something you won't even learn, or it's very difficult to get a good learning, you know, just on pool hydraulics. Everyone just sort of goes, oh yeah, 50 mil pipe here, 50 mil pipe there, 40 mil there. And it's sort of a little bit more to it than that. You know, I guess you've got different pipe runs on different projects. You've got different sort of plumbing that's going in different locations. Like, you know, we would sort of say, you know, elevated plumbing is always difficult to have because pumps hate pulling. They love pushing, but they don't like pulling water, whether it's in a water tank or whatever. You know, pumps don't like to suck up, so they love to push and they love to drive. So there's quite a lot. There's quite a bit that goes into it. But again, as I said, it's about sourcing sort of good mentors, because it's something that you'd probably enjoy. You know, given the fact, getting an insight and just sort of looking at the work you do, you would really enjoy. You're very hands-on. You like doing the majority of the project yourself. So you know, it's probably a good starting point. So you could say, well, I might sort of see if I can do this one myself. Build your mum and dad's pool, or build you know, one for a builder mate, or you know, I guess you build it under their license, and you can just get a little bit of a feel for it. But yeah, but there's a bit more to it, you know, like you can. But I think if you follow some really simple sort of steps on, you know, your excavation, because you yield the, you know, people sort of go, oh, my walls have blown out this much, I've got so much more concrete in there. Well, it's not about how much concrete, it's about steel to concrete ratios. So you need to sort of have the right amount of steel to concrete ratios, which your engineer designs and specifies. But we see some, even on Instagram, you look at some stuff and you go, oh my God, are you serious? You're going to post that on Instagram? Oh, and we had a contractor post some stuff on Instagram of one of our jobs about a year back. And I said, seriously, you can't do that. I said, one, you've done a terrible job. And we ended up pulling it all apart, this steel install, and we did it again. That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
So I guess it's sort of knowing, and I could tell that from Instagram photos. You know, you go online, you go, oh my God, are you serious? You're posting that? That job is terrible. And I could pick out this guy, you know, he posted maybe 8 shots on Instagram, and I just circled all of them. I marked it all up. I sent it to him. I go, that's terrible. That's terrible. That's terrible. You can't do that. That's not on. So I guess you got to know what you're looking for, you know, and you got to be able to, well, you know, as you know, you got to read plans, you got to understand, you know, how concrete works, how the steel works. So, you know, we've just had a steel shortage this year, so you know we've sort of run out of, you know, 400 grade steel. So guys were using, you know, 250 grade steel, which is the sort of old light whippy bar that you'd put in freeform pools. Now, that sort of, you got to change your centers. You can't sort of just use that steel that's got a less, it's MPA, it's a lot less than 400 grade, it's 250 grade, so you got to put more steel in. But we would sort of see jobs and go, we know that they aren't sourcing that grade, and you go, oh my God, this is crazy. So I guess it's sort of having some, what's the word? Sort of having a bit of pride in what you do and make sure you try and get it as right as you can well, all the time. As you know, it doesn't always go to plan, does it? But you try your best to get it right all the time.
Yeah, that could be one of the benefits, mate. The reason that I think it looks easier than what it actually is because we work with some good pool builders, so they make it look easier than what it is.
Yeah, and you're probably right there. Yeah, guys that have got a little bit of confidence with what they're doing, and you would meet some good builders with the work you're doing along the way. So, but I think it's just, as I said, it's about your contractors. You know, you got to be able to source good contractors. You got to be able to sort of manage your cash flow. I think a lot of people in any business, they tend to sort of go, wow, I've got this amazing cash flow, and start sort of celebrating. But, you know, you just got to sort of baby steps, I think, with any sort of business, and build it up slowly.
So were you getting a lot of your pool jobs from just the landscape jobs that you were doing, or did you get any specific ones where they wanted just the pool?
Yeah. We'd and that's sort of probably what was happening a little bit more. You know, we'd you know, I guess as you're building more projects, people get to meet you, you know, more. You're meeting up with architects and you know, architects and designers, probably more architects, I think, rather than landscape designers, maybe. I don't know. Or probably a bit of both. But, you know, like architects would sort of look at your work or meet you, or you get introduced to them, and then you would, in that respect, you would be probably looking at being the pool builder. So, yeah. So
I saw on one of your Instagram posts from back in February, but there was one of your construction supervisors, I don't know if he still works with you now, but you worked on his parents' place in 2002. Did their landscaping?
Oh yeah, yeah,
They still work together?
yeah.
That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah. No, we that was in Hoyt Street in Hampton. We built Geordie's parents' first landscape, in 2002, and he was a terrific young kid. I liked him, and his parents were really nice as well. Really lovely people, and which I'd sort of say, almost all our clients, we have most of them you'd invite along to a barbecue, but Geordie's parents were super nice. They were similar age to me at the time, and he was a terrific young guy. And I guess I had a son of a similar age, so I'd go around the site, and this kid would be just kicking a footy all the time, and he'd be up, handballing it to himself, and then we did his parents' second place in 2015, and he just finished school at the time, and was sort of probably looking at a career, and he was sort of deciding what he wanted to do, and his dad said, well, why doesn't he come and help you? And I said, oh, look, he's more than welcome. He can come and work with us, see how he goes. And anyway, he went off and worked on a dairy farm for a bit, because he was working the school he'd gone to. They had a dairy farm up in the Yarra Valley somewhere. So he sort of had a bit of a passion for the cattle, and then he came and just gave it a go. He worked with us for, I don't know, he came and worked with us, and he hasn't left, basically. So he's worked with me now for, well, since 2015, 16, I guess. So yeah, he's worked with me for 5 years now.
And, how many staff do you have at the moment?
There's 3.5 of us, and then I've got a girl that works with me as subcontract in the office as doing admin. She's terrific. She's really good. So she hasn't been in the office now for 6 months. So so everything's pretty much online. But no, she's really good. So she does all our sort of the home affairs. My wife does some social media stuff with us, and on marketing and a bit of that sort of stuff. And then there's myself and Geordie and Beau, and then and we've got also Geordie's younger brother works with us for part of the week. He does 3 days a week while he's at uni. So it's a good team, really good team. So it's nice to. You go on.
When did you stop doing the landscapes? Because I know you originally Domain Pools and Landscapes, and now you're Domain Pools. So when did that change happen? Or do you still do?
No, look, we don't. I'm sort of always happy to facilitate. But no, I'll just try and see when we finish this job. Maybe, so probably 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I'd say. I had a young guy that worked with me for 12 years, I think. And look, he was a terrific, great landscaper, fastidious, did some beautiful work, built some beautiful projects, and he decided he wanted a little bit of a change, which was good. I think it was good for both of us. Like, he felt like he needed a change, and I was ready for him to sort of move on. And so I guess at that stage, Joel, I guess he was my key sort of player at the time with my landscaping, and I guess it's not that I couldn't have continued the landscape side of my business, but I just sort of felt, like, as I said, I'd probably do 60 hours a week, and I just sort of felt like I was running 2 businesses and I was managing 2 separate businesses. And I guess without having a really good key leading hand and someone really interested in the landscape, it just sort of made me reassess things. And I went, nah, look, this is time. It's sort of time that I sort of stepped aside. And it's sort of funny that from the time I sort of did that, landscape is just has become the real go-to trade again. Like, there's been a real push again for high-end quality landscape and high-end quality landscapers. So I think the landscape sector's probably being able to sort of command probably the best dollars I've ever seen, to be honest. And rightfully so. You know, it's a very, very labour intensive, very physical job that you know, I guess you need to be sort of demanding the right sort of money if you're going to retire at 60 and be upright and be able to walk. So I guess
even 60 is ambitious.
Yeah, well, a mate of mine worked for WorkCover. He was pretty high up at WorkCover, and he always said to me, if you start as an apprentice at 15 or 16, or these days it's probably 18, 19, 20 and older, you need to be able to work your entire life and walk out at 60 and be able to be physically still strong. So, and I've always taken that on board, and I always said to my guys, look, there's no one's going to break any records here. We're not going to kill ourselves. We're just going to do a really good job, and we're going to be smart about it. And we're going to be smart about how we put it together. I mean, it's not as if you still don't have those days, even now, with what we do now, where you just go, this is going to kill me. And I guess, look, we've had a couple of jobs last year. I think we had a couple of jobs last year through that really sort of wet period when we were able to get back to work last September. And we had sort of several jobs that caved in like really badly, and it was a real test of character, because you've got to pull out, you know, you're cutting steel out of the way, and you're trying to remove, you know, 3, 5, 6 cubic meters of clay and mud and whatever it might be, just to sort of make this job happen. So it can be a real strength of character still. And I'll still get out there, you know, if and when it needs to happen, you know, I'll just get out there and jump in with the lads, you know, if we need to, and give them a hand. Even Geordie's dad sometimes has come out on site, and as I said, I've known him for years, and Geordie will just say, "Dad, we need a hand to get all this mud out."
Yeah,
So classic. Nah, look, that's, you know, and you're not at ground level, like you're down 2 meters, you know,
Yeah.
You're down sort of 1.5 to 2 meters deep. So there's those sort of things with swimming pool construction which really can test you. Like we've got a job at the moment, for example, that I've got a 2.5 meter cut, and I'm 500 mil off a back fence, and we've put protection works in there now just to preserve the boundary. And I'm hedging my bets on they've got a beautiful thicket of bamboo hedge on the other side of the fence, which has consolidated the top 800 mil of ground, and it's just full of root fibres. So, and it's a sandy area. We've formed it up, but to be honest, I mean, that's what makes you not sleep at night, because it's like we could lose a whole fence line, and, you know, I don't know. I'd hate to think what this bamboo hedge would be worth if it fell into this pool excavation. So,
what's your answer when people ask you to compare concrete and fiberglass pools? That's when I get asked occasionally.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess the fiberglass guys are going to hate me now. So, this is how it works, Joel. This is how it works. It's all based on land value. I love real estate. I've made more money out of real estate than I've made out of anything. And I always say to people, it's about the value of your real estate. If your real estate can carry the value of a good quality concrete pool, then that's what you're going to install. Why is that? Well, I'm going to actually build something that's got some structural integrity. One. I'm relying on maybe 150, 180, 200 mil thick of steel reinforced concrete with, you know, that's fully engineered for that site specific. Fiberglass is about 15 mil of chopper glass with a chopper gun all in there, cut some resins, incredibly toxic. It's once it's in the ground, it's all suspended, all that toxic material suspended. But in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, or whatever, when that fiberglass pool comes out, what are you going to do with it? you cannot recycle that stuff. It is a toxic hazard. Whereas I'd sort of look at what we do, and I guess it sort of probably goes back to early days landscaping where we'd recycle everything. You know, railway sleepers became popular because you could build retaining walls out of them. You know, old railway sleepers. So at least with a concrete pool, we know we can recycle the steel, we can recycle, you know, they crush the concrete, they crush all the tiles, they can actually be repurposed. The PVC pipe is recyclable. If and when, but that's just one side of it. But I guess it gets back to the value of your property now. And I would look at, I remember talking to a local builder. We're just on Bayside in Melbourne. And I remember talking to one of the builders, and when I was looking at building myself, and he said, "Oh, look, we got a record price on this project." And he said, "You go around and have a look at the home." And I walked through the front door, and from the front door right down, looking through to the back rear garden, I could see a swimming pool. And I said to my wife as soon as I walked in, "Bloody fiberglass pool! Can you imagine? These guys have just got a record price for the area, and yet they're put in a fiberglass pool." I said, a discerning buyer would, in my opinion, would be very hesitant. And we've seen fiberglass come out and people will put in, you know, a customized concrete swimming pool built for what they're looking to do, their lifestyle. So look, we'll look at the positives on fiberglass. It's quick, it's easy to install, the material's inert so it can balance, and it's very easy to get your pool up and running and very easy to maintain. But from a value add on a property, when we can sort of customize a swimming pool, build a swimming pool, I can build a house on top of it. I can build you know, I can integrate my paving slab with it. I can do pretty much anything with that pool. I can cut it in half. I can sort of put half of it into which, you know, we could put half of it into a cellar and we could still keep half the pool. I could put half into a water tank. I could build a spa inside that existing swimming pool if I needed to. It's just, I guess, when you've got something like steel and concrete, it's a very versatile material, you know. And we've seen, you know, people build houses. You could do a house out of shotcrete.
Well, I've seen the freeform pools that you do as well. Like they're pretty cool looking. You're obviously not going to do that.
Yeah.
With the last one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's there's something about the freeform pools. Well, I mean, they're certainly not popular, although I'd say some curves are becoming a lot more popular in swimming pool design, which you see, it's sort of really nice. I guess it just sort of takes out those sharp edges, doesn't it? But there's something to be said for the property that can handle that sort of really natural landscape. And I think with a freeform pool, looks amazing.
Yeah. Have you got a favourite pool that you've done?
Good question. Yeah, good question. Yeah, look, I've got a pool at the moment, which you know, it's only like 3.5 meters by 3.5 meters. So I always say to people, you don't need to build a big pool, and I guess it needs to be scaled to the area. It needs to be scaled so it really works in an area. And I really love this pool. It was one we sort of designed, and the design came out of some engineering that we had to sort of try and sort of come up with on the project. So it was built between it's on a duplex. This woman, she bought a 2 on a block, and so she wanted to try and park the swimming pool in an area which would have been 5 meters from her house to her neighbour's garage. So we had to sort of do a probe test on all the foundations there to work out the depths of all the foundations on the adjoining sort of structures. And we just built this little pool in this little courtyard that's probably it might be 3.8 by 3.8, whatever it is. But we sort of popped it up out of the ground a bit because we needed to. We couldn't dig it down because we'd undermine all the adjoining foundations. And it's probably one of my favourite little pools. It just sits beautifully in this courtyard. The purpose of it being popped up, how we sort of overcame the issue of, or be able to build this woman a swimming pool that had some depth. We still had it at, say, 1.5 metres deep. And we were, say, a metre off the adjoining structures on both sides, and we sort of created some seats in there as well, which gave us a little bit more tolerance to be able to put the pool in. Now, as simple as it sounds, I really love that pool. I look at photos of that pool and go, yeah, it looks great. Guys that used to work with me came in and did the paving around it. They did a beautiful job, and it just sits so well. And it's sort of, this woman, she was a single woman, just, but has her kids come over and that sort of thing. And it just really, really worked. And I guess that's a bit of a favourite. So we're just complete. Yeah. So, and we just completed another one just recently, which is which I think we got on Instagram as well, which is I think this was, it was a bit of a technical sort of job where we sort of had this swimming pool integrated in with a home structure. So we had a tilt panel home. Essentially, it was tilt panels, and some panels were actually built on site. And we work with these Italian concreters, and they are just absolute wizards. And so this pool sits on a basement, sits on top of a basement, sits on these cantilevers over, and sits on some piers and capping beam, and then it's integrated within the structure of the home as well, the actual wall of the pool. And we've got it pretty much seamless. The tilt panel wall is, the line of that goes right down to the tile line. Like, it's all, the transition's perfect. Like we got it all perfect. And we had some, as much as we had engineering on the project, we had some real design and construct sort of details that we needed to do, because it was, while the pool's elevated, so we needed to have an off-form concrete look around the pool. So it wasn't going to be shotcrete, because we knew we couldn't, even if we had beautiful formwork and we had really, which we did have, but even having really good quality brand new formwork and silicon all the joints up before you shotcrete it, we just knew we weren't, because you can get honeycombing, or you could get some sort of patches behind the steel, perhaps, where we couldn't really get the concrete. It wasn't able to fill it that well. You can't vibrate this concrete. So we, a steel fixer, we put in ferrules. So we put in all these steel ferrules, which they use in say concrete formwork, which are, you've probably seen them. You'll see, like, in panels, you'll see like a metal screw in there, and the steel fixer, our steel fixer, has sort of installed these in with all our steel structure. They have a little plastic cap on them that fixes to the actual formwork. So when you strip your formwork, it pulls the cap out, and it keeps this perfect, neat little hole which has got a female thread, and then you can thread your bars in there. And then the concrete formwork guys came in, and then they formed it again, put all their steel into our ferrules, and then did the most amazing off-form concrete you've ever seen. So that one's pretty cool as well. Just because it was a different style of construction, and we learnt a lot. Like the whole apron where we installed the pools all waterproofed. We weren't allowed to put too much bulk concrete in there, so we had to sort of seats and areas where we had raised areas, we had blocks of foam in there. We had to insulate all the plumbing in there so you didn't get too much noise reverberation through your floor. And yeah, it was pretty interesting. It's a good job.
I'm not quite just digging a hole and putting steel and concrete in.
No, we never actually had to dig a hole on that job. Yeah, no, it was just a really interesting job to sort of be involved in, and we did another one a few years ago with a mid-tier commercial builder on the director's property. We built this amazing pool there, and it was interesting because they did we didn't have enough room to put board piers in, or the builder didn't. They were putting in all the protection works on the boundary, and there was not enough room to put in, you know, maybe 350 or 450 board piers around the perimeter. And there was next doors, there were 2 garages that was hanging on the boundary of this property on both sides, and the cut again needed to go down 2.5 meters. So it was a really interesting, because we kept saying to the builder, well, we'll need to put in protection works piers all the way around this home, so or around the adjoining property, so we can get the pool in. And they said, oh look, we'll sort of work out what we can do. So again, working with a mid-tier commercial builder, they came up with a toe footing. So essentially what they did was they dug out areas that were, say, 1.2 meters wide at a time. So, and it was quite amazing what they did. So they just had an excavator in there, and they just dig out 1.2 meters, and then they put all their rebar in there, and then they did a toe footing that came out underneath the swimming pool. So they constructed these protection works that were literally 150 mil wide, thick concrete walls and floor, and that was all done in shotcrete. And then they pinned them all together, so it was sort of continuous. Ultimately, each panel was continuous because they dig the next one. Once that one had gone off for 7 days, they were able to dig the next one. And progressively, they did this, I mean, incredibly expensive, but incredibly expensive way to do it. But it was amazing to see how you could actually overcome a problem where they couldn't reduce any width on the swimming pool. They couldn't afford to lose any width. So the expense they went to was phenomenal. So that job was pretty amazing as well. That's all. The whole home is built out of concrete, like it's all on site. Again, off-form concreters have built this whole home bespoke. That one wasn't even panels at all. They did it all on site. That was pretty amazing to sort of see that type of building and construction. So particularly, again, I guess with a passion for concrete and steel, it's nice to see how, you know, these guys that do it every day, how they work. So
yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what's coming up next for Domain Pools? Anything in the pipeline?
Yeah, look, we got some great jobs. We're in construction at the moment, Joel. We've got some fantastic jobs. Just trying to think of, we've got one in Kew that we've just got a contract on, which is like, it's on acreage on the Yarra in Kew. And this is incredible property. And there's like a vineyard next door, and you wouldn't expect to see a vineyard in Melbourne, but there's a vineyard next door, and it's on the Yarra, so it must have been backfilled like 100 years ago or something, because it's apparently in the flood area, a floodplain of the Yarra. So you're not allowed to essentially build on the majority of the block, only really when it gets sort of closer to the street, the further away to the further away we get from the river. So we've got this elevated swimming pool we're building there that's all been architecturally designed, and it's sitting on a mountain of screw piles, and you know, it's got all the fancy Remco covers on it, and it's got a mitered edge on the top edge, so you can't walk around the perimeter. And this will be an amazing project, because it's sort of, you would think you were, you know, in country Victoria somewhere, because the whole outlook is just bush basically. It's incredible.
So do you do a lot of designs for the pools?
Again, we'll sort of just do some D&C with the architects, you know, design and construct a bit with the architects and the builders. So I guess when you've sort of been reading plans for years and you sort of understand the construction and you understand what can and what can't, you know, some things just don't work that well. And I guess the longer you've been building, I guess, whether it's swimming pools, landscaping, you know the things that you're going to trip over on. And so, yeah, we do get, and I get sort of pretty much involved with it. I mean, if I don't consider something's going to work, I will certainly let an architect or a client, I'll just say, look, I think I'm really not happy with this. I don't think, I just don't think that'll work that well. So yeah, we sort of try and get involved. I guess, you know, if you've got pride in your work and you sort of see something that's, you know, you can make better, you know, if you can get a better result out of it, and for a client, we'll sort of go to those lengths to make it work, I guess.
Yep. Tony, I could keep talking for the whole day, but I'll let you get back to doing what you do. So thank you very much for coming on.
No worries. Yeah, no worries, Joel. And look, it's always great seeing you doing what you're doing. You guys do some great work. It's great to see. As I said, there's some landscapers out there that I do follow on Instagram. You guys are one of them, and I sort of think, I look at your work and I've got a lot of admiration for what you're doing. And I think, you know, you guys are pretty much hands-on as well. And I think it's a really good sort of skill to have. You obviously got a pretty good team of guys. And I think, you know, if you wanted to, you know, get into the pool side of the business, it's sort of something that you shouldn't shy away from if you're interested. Because I guess there's been a whole bunch of guys that have come into the industry from the landscape sector. And I guess there's always some fear that people will, you know, take your livelihood away. But I think good competition is good competition. You know, if it's just, you know, I guess I don't worry. You know, bad competition is you don't want. I'd rather have good competitors and good people out there. Like I had a client ring me this morning, and she said I'd rung her 8 months ago, and she rang me this morning and said, "Look, I'm sorry, I feel so rude. I just thought I'd let you know. Look, I meant to get back to you earlier, but," she said, "look, we've given it to another builder who was a really good builder." I said, "No, it's great. Look," I said, "at least you've gone with a good builder. I'm happy about that. You know, the guy you've gone with is really good, you know, so you'll get a great result." So hopefully, mate, you'll keep moving with your business. And I think it's just sort of, you know, I find with business, you got to keep evolving. You know, that's my other big thing that I get sort of really bored doing the one thing. And I guess, you know, you use your business as well to sort of elevate you in other areas, whether it's in property or, you know, investing in different stuff, and you meet different people along the way, and you keep the conversation going, and you find different ways you can sort of elevate and utilize your business to make more money, I guess. So
that's why landscaping is such a good trade. There's so many different things.
Oh, it's such a good trade, and I guess it's so good to see it getting a bit of a resurgence again. I mean, there's quite a few young guys around our area down here on the Bayside that are landscapers, and they're, you know, terrific young guys, really good, you know, and they've, you know, building really good businesses and doing really quality work. So good stuff.
Oh, thank you, Tony.
Good on you, Joel. You take it easy, mate.